From Anshe Sfard Bethel Emeth Congregation, it's time to take 10 minutes for Torah with Rabbi Joel Finkelstein.
Welcome to our discussion of Parshat Bo, 10 Plagues, No Excuses. We dedicate our learning today to the Sunday junior high class over at the Anshe Sfard Bethel Emeth Congregation in Memphis, Tennessee. If we ask ourselves a question, why the need for 10 plagues? I mean, doesn't Paro and don't we the readers and doesn't Egypt get the idea after 1, 2, 3, 7 plagues? Why the need for all 10, the last 3 being in this week's Parsha? Well, in order to answer this question, we need to look at how does each plague show that it was God who did it? You know, there could be a plague and one could say, well, it's terrible there's a plague, but who says it's from God? How does each plague show that it is from God? Number 2, what does it show? What does it show about God's power and dominion over the world and nature? And finally, what's the reaction of Pharaoh and his people to the various plagues? What's the difference in each plague? So if we look very quickly through the plagues, we go as follows. If we look at the blood, it's unusual, and that which makes it seem that it's from God is that Moshe lifts the staff, the very staff that had done miracles before, turning to a snake, and we see clearly that Moshe brings it about. In the case of the frogs, he predicts it. He predicts the beginning. He tells them when he'll end the plague. And he's willing to pray to end the plague. And again, a staff is used. The lice, also a staff is used. And the necromancers, the magicians can't do it. They can't replicate that which Moshe did. That shows somehow maybe God is involved. In the case of the mixed animals, the arov, the lions and the bears and the like, number 1, he threatens to bring it. He predicts that it's going to come. And it's not found in Goshen. Not all the plagues does it say explicitly that it wasn't in Goshen, that the Jews were not plagued with it. Here, that is one of the factors that's explicitly stated. And he does stop the plague as well. In the pestilence and the dever, it's only the Egyptians who get it. And those Egyptians who are more righteous do not get it. I'm sorry, that's for the hail. And then leprosy, the very act of throwing the soot into the air, with that act, is very flamboyantly, the plague of boils comes about. In the hail plague, there was never a plague like it. So it's true that all the plagues may be unusual, but only certain plagues it says that there was never a plague quite like it. There was never hail quite like that. And he lifts his hand, not a staff, but a hand. He's able to stop the plague. It's not in Goshen. There's fire with the hail as well, very unusual. With the locust, again, the worst ever. There's never been anything like it. And it is one of the worst, and he's also able to stop it as well. Darkness, it's very thick. He does it with his hand, with a wave of the hand. And the Israelites did have light, so it was only for the Egyptians. Finally, the plague of the firstborn, only for the Egyptians, only for those Jews who did not put the blood on the posts, and he warned them about it. So what does it show? The blood shows that the Egyptians were trying to commit murderous acts relating to water. The blood shows that God controls the Nile. He controls the water. Frogs show that God controls the earth, controls different types of creepy, crawly creatures, and that God helps and heals, as we mentioned last week, in addition to bringing plagues. The lice shows that God has an impact on the ground, that God can strike a human being and hurt him, that God can deal with things that are even extremely small, which others could not. The mixed animals shows God's influence on the higher species, the lions and the bears and the like. Strong animals, animals that perhaps others would deify, like lions. And he can also heal as well. He can answer prayers. The pestilence or the dever shows that God is in charge also of the microscopic, the diseases, and the like. Leprosy shows that man and beast can be affected, and also that disease is affected by God. The hail shows that God controls the fire and the sky. He's able to have ice and fire at the same time. He controls the fate of the plants, many areas, different realms of life. Locusts, again, affects the plants. The swarms. Darkness affects the sky, affects the luminary bodies, which many people worshipped. So people who worship the Nile, they worship the sun, the air. It's all affected by God. And finally, the firstborn shows the affects life and death. Through the plagues, there are different reactions by the Egyptians. Some may say, no big deal, we can do it too. Other plagues, Pharaoh begins to say that he has sinned. Some of the plagues, he asks Moshe to pray for him, as we laid out last week. In some cases, it says that they began to respect the Jews, and each plague, a different element comes out in the reaction as well. So the 10 plagues are not just another plague, another plague, and another plague, but rather each plague brings out something different. It shows how God has dominion, and each one, if Pharaoh is inclined to say, well, just because he lifts his wand doesn't mean anything. Just because he lifts his hand, just because he starts it, just because he stops it, just because it's so bad, just because it's not in Goshen, each plague and its wonder, he could, a skeptic or Pharaoh or the Egyptians or the necromancers or the Khartoumim, they could all claim, well, that is not really a big deal. We can do it too. And they can always make excuses. Excuses. The idea of 10 different plagues is meant to sort of stomp out all the excuses that one could make. In case someone is inclined to try to rationalize each plague, oh, that was nothing. That's the nature of the human mind, is that when you see something miraculous, you say, it's not really miraculous. You see the hand of God, you say it really wasn't God. We always have excuses, always have reasons to write God out of the story. And the 10 plagues make an effort in a variety of ways to show that God is in charge of a variety of aspects of the human existence, almost recapitulating the creation from small things to big things, from the earth to the air to the sky. And in this way, trying to deal with the warped human mind that's always trying to think of ways to weasel out of our moral obligation imposed by the existence of God and a moral God in this world. This parsha, these parshiot, are all about the 10 plagues. And 10 plagues remind us not only that Pharaoh was so foolish that he kept making excuses, but that we always kind of make these excuses and rationalizations in our mind and reasons not to acknowledge the presence of God in our lives. We have to stop that. Like Pharaoh, we have to get off that habit, and we have to begin to see God. On the contrary, in the sea, in the earth, in the air, in the sky, wherever we turn, to stop making excuses why we can't see God. Stop asking questions, where is God? And start looking and seeking and finding God wherever we can. Thank you for joining us here at the Anshe Sfard Bethel Emeth congregation here in Memphis, Tennessee, for our discussion of the plagues. Join us each week for our discussion of the Parsha, how-to videos, and our new playlist as well. Thanks to Jason Lefkowitz, our producer.
This has been 10 Minutes for Torah with Rabbi Joel Finkelstein. To learn more, visit ASBEE.org.